Hello everyone. So I just kind of want to do a quick overview of the Xperia XA Ultra. I made a review of this phone around 2 months ago, so I've had it for probably about 3 months or so. And I just had a couple of things to add in since I've had a little more experience with it. And recently my biggest gripe, which I obviously knew as I bought the phone, is that it has 16 gigabytes of storage. And the phone I came from, which is the Xperia Z Ultra, and also many older Android phones, so I have 16 gigs of storage. But it seems to me as if the newer Android version takes up much more space. And also, since this phone has a better camera, pictures also take up more space. And at this point, I can't even update my apps as I am out of space. And I wanted to point out that I have not taken many photos of this phone at all. I don't think there's definitely not 100 photos, probably between 50 and 80 photos. There's no videos. I deleted all the videos as they take up space. So I basically only have the very few apps that I have installed, and I don't use many apps at all. I don't have a single game on this. In fact, the only app that really uses a good amount of space is the boating navigation software. So I'm just going to scroll through a list of apps I have, and I really think that most people have many more apps than this. So this is a little worrisome. So as you can see, most of these are just kind of generic, Instagram, Maps, Microsoft Remote Desktop. All those are very small. Uber, YouTube, some Sony stuff, a browser. So this is Boating HD. This is the only pretty much large app I have. And other than that, as you can see, I have like a weather app, a stock app, which is also pretty small, and Nova Launcher, but Reddit, Steam, which does not have a single game installed or anything. I just downloaded it for chatting. Tides app, and I think Waze is actually the only other semi-large app. So that's it. I don't have a single game. And as we all know, the games can take up a lot of space these days. And this is very worrisome. I do not have an SD card yet, so I have not backed up anything. But considering I literally have almost no apps, and as you can see my home screen, I pretty much just use the browser, Google Hangouts, Photos, Reddit, and that's it. And I use the Play Memories app to copy things from my camera and things like that. That's all. This is very, very little. I have no music, and like I said, very little photos, and I can't even update my apps. And I had the Xperia Z Ultra for 3 years, and you could scroll through the photos for a solid minute or two. That's how many I had. And it still didn't run out of space. It would usually bug me saying I'm kind of low, but I was never not able to update any apps. And this really is very worrisome. At this point, I can't update my apps, and there's essentially nothing on this device. Yes, I can purchase a SD card SD card, and put my photos onto it, which would get rid of a little bit of space. But like I said, I don't really have that many photos. And so this is really kind of a bummer. And in some ways, I really think this is a complete, utter fail. It's pretty obvious the new Android system, I'm just touching the screen so it doesn't go to sleep. The new Android definitely seems to take up more space. And this is just simply, you can't have this small space on a new phone anymore. And I almost don't know what to do. I'm going to try getting an SD card and seeing if I can, I'm not even sure if I can put apps on it these days, but it's really very minimal. And considering I had a Nokia N900, which was 5+ years ago, which had 40 gigabytes of storage, I am now in 2017 and I have a phone that has 16 gigs of storage. I guess I just thought it would be fine because my Xperia Z Ultra was always fine, but this is crazy. I've never gotten to a point where I can't update my apps while I essentially have no apps. There are games out there now that take up 500, 600, 700 megabytes. I don't have a single one. I don't even have a 10 megabyte game. And this really is a bummer. And the only other thing that I have to complain about, I am on T-Mobile, and I think I mentioned this in the first review, but essentially the reception is terrible. I don't know what it is about this phone. It's simply terrible. And it's not T-Mobile. I know some of you might think, and I know obviously in certain areas, in rural areas, T-Mobile is terrible, but I've never had any issues with any of my other phones, and this phone constantly drops calls. People constantly can't hear me. People call me and I just have to hang up and call them back. I don't know what's going on. I haven't actually taken it to T-Mobile, but it downloads all the APN settings. Everything should be correct. I've never once gone to T-Mobile to set up any of my phones. And I've also seen some other people complain about this, so I'm not sure if this is just an isolated issue or this is very common. And then the one last complaint is, once again, I mentioned the first review, and that's really the placement of these buttons. So the way the buttons are placed, it's really bothersome. And this phone legitimately should be marketed as a left-hand user device, because in this way you can at least some way get away without pressing this. But I almost cannot put this phone in my pocket without accidentally touching the power button. Or also, if you hold it down, it brings the shutdown screen. So now all you have to do is accidentally touch power off in your pocket and your phone turns off. So I've found it in my pocket turned off quite a few times. And this is not a very Sony-like thing, but there's basically been no thought given into where these buttons should be. So if the volume rocker were to put where it usually is, and maybe this was, I don't know, even moved down, or even if it's just the volume rocker was moved, you'd have space to hold it. But it really is an extremely difficult phone to hold, and it cannot be understated just how slippery it is. So if you don't have a case, it is extremely slippery. Like it's the most slippery phone I've ever had. And the Z Ultra had a glass back, which meant that if your palms were even the slightest bit kind of sweaty or just not completely dry, your fingers would kind of stick to it. But this phone it literally just flies out of your hand. So if you're standing anywhere and someone accidentally bumps you, it'll just fly out of your hand. And because of the placement of the buttons, it makes it even more difficult to kind of hold it. Those are my biggest gripes, and honestly, they're kind of big fails. And at this point, I really wish I didn't get this phone. And also, I haven't found a good screen protector, as this screen kind of has edges which curve, so it's kind of difficult to put a screen protector in. This is the first phone I've owned in multiple years that has a scratch on the screen now, and it's a little too bad. So I think that if you're trying to get this phone, I really would not get it simply because of the storage. It's just inadequate. I mean, if you plan to use one app, you can get away with it. Like I said, I barely use apps. I don't play a single game on my phone. I don't have a single MP3 on my phone. I've taken pictures sparingly, and I've deleted every video or uploaded it to my Google Drive. So there's not a single video on the phone, and I can't even update my apps. So yeah, I guess these are my 2 cents. Having this phone for another 2 months. At this point, I think I'm just going to keep it for now. But I really wish I didn't get it.